When Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs premiered in 1937, it didn't just shatter box office records. It sent shockwaves through Hollywood's animation industry. Max Fleischer, whose Betty Boop cartoons had long reigned, suddenly faced what many called an existential threat. Disney had proven audiences would embrace a full-length animated feature, and Fleischer knew he had to respond or risk irrelevance. Fleischer Studios quickly announced Gulliver's Travels for 1939, betting on their secret weapons, rotoscoping technology, and innovative three-dimensional backgrounds. While Disney used traditional hand-drawn animation, Fleischer's technique of tracing live-action footage created fluid, lifelike movement. Their elaborate miniature sets and multi-plane effects offered a unique depth, distinct from Disney's multi-plane backgrounds. Competition bred tension, with industry-wide debates over animation techniques and occasional accusations of idea borrowing, though no formal lawsuits between Disney and Fleischer are documented. Both studios, however, faced mounting legal costs from various disputes during this era. The production race proved financially punishing. Fleischer's ambitious schedule for Gulliver's Travels stretched resources thin, with soaring costs draining the studio's finances. Disney, with deeper pockets and stronger distribution, weathered the storm. When Gulliver's Travels debuted, it earned respectable reviews but couldn't rival Snow White's cultural or financial impact. The rivalry's outcome reshaped animation. Fleischer's financial strain from competing with Disney ultimately forced a sale to Paramount in 1941. Disney's victory set the standard for animated features, showing how one studio's innovation could transform and even consume its fiercest competitor. In 1919, four Hollywood legends, Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and D.W. Griffith, founded United Artists, declaring that artists should control their own destiny. This radical move threatened the Big Five studios, MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, RKO, and 20th Century Fox, who dominated the industry through vertical integration, controlling production, distribution, and theaters. United Artists' model gave creative control and profit sharing directly to filmmakers, bypassing the studio system. Industry insiders saw this not just as competition, but as a revolution. The Big Five responded swiftly, allegedly coordinating to block UA's access to prime theaters and distribution networks, using their exhibition chains to marginalize independent releases. Chaplin and Pickford's departure from lucrative studio contracts was seen as a public rejection of the studio system, deepening the rivalry. Rumors circulated that the major five organized boycotts, pressuring theater owners to prioritize studio films over UAs. The message was clear: challenge the system and face consequences. UA filmmakers struggled not just for audiences, but for basic access to screens. Observers noted that the conflict's impact went beyond box office numbers. UA's struggles exposed the fragility of independent production and highlighted the Big Five's monopolistic grip. Legal scrutiny increased, laying the groundwork for the 1948 Paramount consent decrees, which dismantled the studio monopolies. United Artists' gamble planted the seeds of change that would eventually reshape Hollywood. The artists' rebellion triggered the industry's most fundamental transformation, proving that creative independence could challenge and ultimately change the system, even if it took decades to bear fruit. The partnership of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers at RKO wasn't just box office gold. It was a creative shockwave that forced Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer to rethink the movie musical. When Top Hat dominated theaters in 1935, MGM realized its lavish but static musical numbers looked outdated next to RKO's seamless, dance-driven storytelling. Arthur Freed later admitted, "We had to outdo RKO's elegance and precision. Their Astaire-Rogers films were like Swiss watches. Every step, every frame mattered." MGM's response was aggressive talent acquisition. The studio began poaching RKO's creative backbone, starting with choreographer Hermes Pan in 1940. Pan's move reportedly left Astaire feeling betrayed, but his work on MGM's Anchors Aweigh set a new standard for the studio's musicals. MGM's campaign extended to composers, cinematographers, and set designers, anyone who understood RKO's formula. Industry gossip swirled as MGM's raids intensified. Some speculate the studio pressured stars to avoid RKO, with Gene Kelly's loyalty questioned after a brief collaboration. Legal threats followed, with RKO accusing MGM of contract interference. though court records from the 1940s are incomplete. The rivalry sparked innovation. RKO focused on intimate, character-driven numbers, while MGM countered with Technicolor spectacles and elaborate sets. Each studio's advances pushed the other, creating a golden age of musicals. Ultimately, MGM's deep pockets proved decisive. Film Quarterly analysis suggests MGM's talent raids crippled RKO's ability to innovate, contributing to its financial decline by the late 1940s. The rivalry that elevated the genre ended up consuming one of its pioneers, a lasting irony in Hollywood's musical legacy. Some animation historians suggest that Warner Brothers animators didn't just want to compete with Disney, they sought to challenge the very ideals Walt Disney represented. While Disney crafted polished fairy tales with meticulous attention to detail, Warner's Termite Terrace became a creative madhouse where irreverence ruled supreme. Leon Schlesinger's budget-conscious approach forced his team to work faster and cheaper, but that limitation sparked something Disney's deep pockets couldn't buy: pure comedic anarchy. The competition between these animation giants intensified as Warner Brothers attracted several Disney animators seeking greater creative freedom. However, Warner's core team, including Bob Clampett, Chuck Jones, and Tex Avery, developed their distinctive styles directly at the studio, creating a homegrown creative powerhouse that rivaled Disney's established methods. According to industry rumors, Disney may have attempted to lure key Warner talent like Mel Blanc, though such negotiations never materialized into actual departures. Technical innovation became the battlefield where both studios proved their dominance. Disney's multi-plane camera created stunning depth in Snow White, but Warner countered with rapid-fire editing techniques that made their cartoons feel electric. While Disney perfected Technicolor's lush possibilities, Warner's animators mastered limited animation, using fewer frames to create maximum impact with minimal resources. The character creation arms race revealed each studio's core philosophy. Bugs Bunny emerged as the perfect anti-Mickey. Where Disney's mouse was wholesome and optimistic, Warner's rabbit was cynical and subversive. Daffy Duck's manic energy directly challenged Donald Duck's family-friendly tantrums. Some historians argue that Warner's characters were designed to contrast with, and perhaps subtly mock, Disney's moral universe. Many animation scholars view this rivalry as a creative catalyst that drove both studios to new heights, and inevitable compromises that would define American animation for generations. Val Lewton's arrival at RKO in 1942 revolutionized horror cinema with a simple idea. What audiences couldn't see was scarier than any monster makeup. His film Cat People proved that shadows, suggestion, and psychological dread could outshine Universal's classic creature features. Film historians note that the film's success rattled Universal, whose decades-long monster movie dominance suddenly seemed threatened. Universal's response showed their concern. The studio behind Dracula and Frankenstein scrambled to understand why viewers preferred RKO's invisible terrors. While some insiders claim Universal executives held frantic meetings to analyze Cat People's techniques, these stories remain unverified. Universal's immediate releases, like The Ghost of Frankenstein, stuck to traditional monster formulas, but subtle shifts began appearing in later films. The rivalry sparked a race for horror properties and innovative directors. Studios competed for rights to popular horror novels and psychological thrillers, with bidding wars becoming more common. RKO's low-budget model, Lewton's films rarely exceeded $150,000, forced Universal to rethink their costly productions. Some speculate Universal's monster mashups were a direct response to RKO's cost-effective storytelling. This creative competition split Hollywood horror into two paths. Universal doubled down on supernatural spectacle, while RKO pioneered psychological horror that would influence filmmakers for decades. The rivalry pushed both studios to innovate and revealed the genre's potential for reinvention. Val Lewton's legacy endures. Modern horror directors still cite his atmospheric techniques, proving RKO's invisible monsters cast longer shadows than Universal's visible ones ever could. The battle for America's Sweetheart was more than box office. It was about which studio could craft the ultimate childhood fantasy while maximizing profit from real children. When Shirley Temple's dimpled smile brought Fox $20 million in box office and merchandise in 1934, MGM knew they needed their own child star. Their answer was a 13-year-old from Grand Rapids with a voice that could move audiences, Judy Garland, who would become their breakout star at 16. Fox perfected the Temple formula with calculated innocence and relentless promotion, turning her into a multimedia empire with dolls and cereals. MGM's approach with Garland was darker. Studio head Louis B. Mayer saw her as raw material, vowing she would be bigger than Temple ever dreamed of being. This rivalry bred a toxic culture of overwork. Temple endured up to 14-hour shooting days with tutoring squeezed between takes. Garland faced even harsher conditions. MGM allegedly gave her amphetamines to keep her going and sedatives to help her sleep, with studio medical staff managing her regimen. Public feuds, often manufactured by studios and the press, erupted over awards and box office rankings. When Temple received a Special Academy Juvenile Award in 1935, MGM aggressively promoted Garland as the real talent, fueling constant comparisons that ignored their different appeal. The consequences were lasting. Temple transitioned to diplomacy and politics, but Garland's struggles with addiction and mental health became legend. The studio's ruthless pursuit of child star supremacy created both an icon and a cautionary tale that still resonates in Hollywood today. Hollywood's most audacious talent heist began when RKO executives realized they could weaponize creative freedom itself. While other studios treated directors like expensive employees, RKO dangled something revolutionary. Unprecedented artistic control paired with profit participation that could make filmmakers wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. The strategy worked spectacularly when they snatched Orson Welles from under Paramount's nose in 1939, leaving their rivals' executives stunned and scrambling. Paramount had courted Welles aggressively, viewing the radio wunderkind as their ticket to prestige filmmaking. But RKO's offer proved irresistible. Complete creative autonomy, final cut privileges, and a percentage of profits that traditional studio contracts never included. Some industry observers claim Paramount's executives were so confident of landing Welles that they had already begun planning his debut project when news of his RKO deal broke. The defection wars escalated rapidly as both studios began poaching each other's most valuable creative assets. Preston Sturges became the poster child for this musical chairs game, his movements between studios generating endless gossip columns and trade paper speculation. Rumors suggest that Sturges deliberately played studios against each other, leveraging competing offers to secure increasingly favorable terms that include script approval and casting input. This arms race transformed Hollywood's power structure permanently. Directors who had once been glorified technicians suddenly found themselves courted like movie stars, with studios offering luxury offices, personal assistants, and creative partnerships that would have been unthinkable just years earlier. The competition forced both RKO and Paramount to take unprecedented financial risks on unproven filmmakers. The gamble paid off in ways neither studio anticipated. Citizen Kane emerged from this rivalry as perhaps cinema's greatest achievement, while Paramount's response yielded its own masterpieces through directors emboldened by the new creative landscape. The battle for visionary talent had accidentally revolutionized an entire industry, proving that sometimes the most valuable commodity isn't money, it's artistic freedom. Some argue the golden age of biographical epics began with a single gamble that sparked Hollywood's most expensive arms race. When Fox's Wilson earned critical acclaim and solid box office in 1944, Columbia saw a chance to rival the majors in prestige. Their answer was The Jolson Story in 1946, a lavish musical biography that dominated, earning over $4 million and establishing Columbia as a serious player in historical drama. What followed was a war of extravagance that pushed both studios toward financial recklessness. Fox responded with elaborate period pieces, pouring money into ornate sets and costumes. Columbia countered with A-list casts and top designers, sometimes approving costume budgets over $50,000 for a single film, sums that would have stunned Depression-era executives. Industry lore claims the rivalry bred a culture of industrial espionage. Rumors swirled of script pages appearing on rival lots and informants planted in production offices. Release schedules became weapons, with each studio racing to theaters, often resulting in rushed cuts and costly overruns. Production delays grew common as directors demanded more shooting days to outdo their rivals' visual splendor. Sets became ever more elaborate. Columbia's historical recreations took over entire backlots, while Fox built period villages rivaling real historical sites in authenticity and cost. By the early 1950s, the boom turned to bust. Audiences tired of bloated spectacles, and television offered new entertainment. Both studios were left with expensive costume departments and specialized craftsmen they could no longer afford, ending an era when Hollywood believed bigger always meant better. The post-war crime thriller became Hollywood's new battleground when Warner Brothers realized audiences craved gritty realism over polished glamour. Their detective films like The Maltese Falcon proved that shadows and cynicism could be profitable, but Universal refused to let Warner own the genre. Instead, Universal countered with raw, documentary-style urban crime stories, bringing cameras onto real city streets. Universal's breakthrough came with The Naked City in 1948, filmed almost entirely on location in New York. While Warner Brothers mastered atmosphere with studio lighting, Universal captured authentic urban decay no soundstage could match. The film's tagline, "There are 8 million stories in the naked city," directly challenged Warner's theatrical approach. Industry insiders claim both studios engaged in aggressive talent raids, luring crime writers and suspense directors with unprecedented offers. Rumors swirled of scripts appearing on rival lots, sparking accusations of intellectual theft and threats of legal action. The rivalry drove technical innovation. Warner Brothers refined their signature chiaroscuro lighting, while Universal pioneered handheld camera work for a journalistic feel. Location shooting became a point of pride and expense, as each studio sought more exotic urban settings to prove their commitment to realism. Legal threats and accusations of plagiarism became common, with both studios claiming ownership of narrative techniques and visual styles. Blacklisting was rumored, as writers and directors found themselves unwelcome at competing studios after perceived betrayals. The shadowy war ultimately revolutionized American cinema, showing that the most compelling stories often emerge from the darkest corners of both the screen and the industry. The race to create compelling World War II epics intensified when Paramount and Warner Brothers recognized that authentic war footage could significantly enhance their competing projects. Paramount's The Bridges at Tokori and Warner's Battlecry weren't just films. They represented ambitious attempts to capture the hearts of veterans and the wallets of audiences hungry for realistic combat stories. Film historians suggest that 1950s moviegoers had become more discerning about military details, making authenticity a valuable asset in their corporate competition. Military cooperation became a significant advantage that could influence success in this high-stakes contest. Paramount secured access to actual Navy carriers and F-9F Panther jets for their Korean War drama, while Warner Brothers featured Marine Corps training sequences, though the extent of official military involvement remains less clearly documented. Some speculate that studio executives treated Pentagon meetings like diplomatic summits, offering everything from technical consulting fees to promotional partnerships in exchange for military hardware that money alone couldn't buy. Rumors swirled about industrial sabotage that would have impressed actual intelligence operatives. Legend suggests that Warner Brothers operatives leaked Paramount's shooting schedules to military contacts, hoping to disrupt their rivals' access to naval vessels. Production delays plagued both films as scripts underwent mysterious rewrites. Some whisper these changes resulted from leaked story treatments that forced studios to alter their narratives to avoid embarrassing similarities. The competition pushed both productions toward enhanced realism that contributed to evolving war cinema standards. Paramount's aerial sequences captured genuine carrier operations, while Warner's boot camp scenes aimed for authentic military training atmosphere. Directors consulted with decorated veterans who provided authenticity guidance, though their specific editorial influence varied by production. This corporate rivalry helped elevate genre standards, contributing to improved military cooperation and technical accuracy that influenced war films throughout the decade. One could argue that sometimes the fiercest battles happen not on screen, but in studio boardrooms where executives wage campaigns for cinematic supremacy. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.